Hey guys, first regardsman here, until I'll be talking about every single founding chapter in Warhammer 40k lore and tier listing them with my friend Jefficus. Now, what is up, Jefficus? How are you doing today? You ready to tier list these?
I am absolutely ready. I'm excited to be here. The Space Marines have been my favorite faction in Warhammer 40k ever since 2004 when I first got introduced to the setting via Dawn of War. Now, I am a Blood Ravens fan. They are not one of these founding legions or chapters, but I guess we'll just have to make do.
Now, luckily for me, my boys, the Blood Angels, are a founding chapter, so I can gush about these guys a little bit. But first up, we have the Dark Angels. Now, I kind of like the Dark Angels quite a bit. I do think they have like this whole night theme to them. Caliban was like pretty much a medieval world partially, and Lionel Johnson was one of the most ferocious Primarchs ever. Even Lehman Russ was like, maybe I can take him, though to be honest, Lionel Johnson probably could have bodied Lehman Russ. So first up, what are your thoughts on the Dark Angels, Jeff? Where do you think these guys sit in like the whole order of Space Marine founding chapters?
Well, if I have to rate all of these by categories such as like their Primarchs, what makes them unique, and their story overall, I would say the Dark Angels actually have a good chance at basically slotting into the A tier right off the bat, mostly because Lionel Johnson is an amazing duelist, probably the best duelist of all the Primarchs, especially considering that he doesn't really have any special abilities or anything like that. He's just good. He's just that good,
Just
which
the
is really
guy.
impressive on its own. Yeah, he's just a guy.
It does make sense
He
though, considering
does
he's like the Night Legion.
he does get certain abilities in the more modern 40k books, like the 41st, 42nd Millennium type stuff. Pretty much post Great Rift when he makes his return. But during the Horus Heresy, like he was just a dude, a bro, a Chad,
He did have the beard.
and yeah, and without the beard. And then nowadays, when it comes to, or not even nowadays, but just overall, the flavor of the Dark Angels is awesome. It's all about knights. And then when it comes to their lore, the fallen knights, the fallen angels. So basically, you've got like these knights versus dark knights, this whole theme that makes them really, really cool. But they can't really go into S tier because, in my opinion, they didn't really have a major role to play in the Horus Heresy compared to some of the other legions that we're going to talk about.
That is a good point. I mean, I like the Dark Angels just based on like their aesthetic and the fact they're high-tech knights. I kind of like that in sci-fi settings in general. Lionel Johnson is probably not my favorite Primarch, and we are primarily ranking these on like rule of cool and impact and lore. They are a pretty cool chapter. They are kind of up their own ass because they were the first Legion, and they do like kind of have like a huge pride in themselves, which did like partially result in their civil war. I'd say for me, they probably go into B. I know a lot of people love Dark Angels, so it could be much higher for some people, but for me, I'd put them right here. They're by no means like a lame chapter. They are very cool. I just think some other chapters are more interesting and have like a bigger story impact. And Lionel Johnson is like the coolest member of them for me, obviously as their Primarch, but I don't think he pushes them up beyond this, at least for like my opinion. Now, where would you put these guys?
I'm gonna make one more case, one more plea to put them in A tier. They have some awesome models, dude.
That is
Like
true.
their war gear is so unique, and where it took the Space Wolves and the Thousand Suns years in order to get unique models, the Dark Angels just already had them for a long time. Like they already had their theme going for them.
Or part of that is that they already had experience like knights and such with fantasy. But
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see that. All right, no, we'll put them in A. It'll be nice to Dark Angels. They're a very popular legion in general,
A.
and I would say that we can definitely put them here. Okay, so next up we have the Emperor's Children. Fulgrim, the guy who fell to the demon sword, one of the more up his own ass guys, out naturally because he's a Slaneshi cultist at this
Oh yeah.
point, or
Oh yeah.
Slaneshi
Yeah.
demon. And I would say these guys are pretty cool. I actually like their armor aesthetic quite a bit. They may have been up their own ass, but some of them were pretty damn interesting. What do you think about the Emperor's Children?
So I think that if it were up to me, I'm a lore guy. I love reading 40k novels, and I personally would put them into the S tier just because of their impact on many novels across the Black Library. But I know that that would just be absolute heresy. When it comes to their Primarch, Fulgrim, obviously he's very cool. Like you said, he has the Demon Sword, also an adept duelist, nowadays a Demon Prince. But I don't think that he has much going for him. He kind of has his own, when it comes to, like, I guess the other traitor Primarchs, his story is not as impactful to the entire narrative, nor to really the narrative of his entire legion. He's kind of a solo, more of a one-off, doing his own thing.
Yeah, I
And
think
when it comes to
Fulgrim's
the
pretty cool. I do like his recent models, but his impact and lore, it does feel more like a side story, which is kind of the point, you know, like his fall is supposed to be like ancillary to other Primarchs falling. Like naturally the Horus Heresy is primarily about the Horus Heresy, but I think he has a pretty good impact in that. And his duelist, like him being a good duelist is quite an interesting thing for him, especially considering what his legion is all about. And their armor is, I don't know, I like the pink armor on these guys. Like even though they are Slaneshi, it is pretty interesting to have like a Space Marine chapter with a more unique aesthetic, 'cause a lot of them are pretty just like color coded. I'm not a big fan of like the darker colors on the
sure, yeah.
the armors, like things like Iron Hands. So these guys look pretty unique. I'm curious what you think about like their overall battle strategies and where you would put Fulgrim among Primarchs.
So, for Fulgrim, I don't think that he is a tough Primarch by any means. It's kind of interesting because the Horus Heresy paints him as this amazing duelist, but overall, he's really not that great, especially compared to, again, some of the other Primarchs here. Let alone some of the other like more powerful Xenos, for example, in the setting, which we're not even going to get into for this tier list. But I will say that for uniqueness and flavor, the Emperor's Children is really cool because obviously they are Slanesh. They're all about inflicting the maximum amount of pain and damage to their enemies. Things like Noise Marines are freaking awesome. What they do to their faces and stuff outside of combat and battle is just horrific, which gives them this amazing vibe. Very, very grim, dark, and horrific. But for the most part, again, I would personally put them into S because they are involved in so many different novels. For example, the first Eisenhorn book, Xenos. They're a personal favorite of mine as an antagonist in that book. But I think they're probably a good example of a solid C tier pick for the purpose of this list.
I would,
Because they don't really.
I'd
Go
probably
ahead.
put them in like B. I don't know if I put them as low as C. I think they are interesting enough to go up. I think they're more interesting than like some of the following chapters here for sure. So I would probably put them in B. I could obviously see an argument for C or S depending on like how you feel about their impact in the actual books. But I think B is a pretty good middle ground.
Yeah, I'm thinking about some of the other legions because whenever I do a tier list, I like to see like a bell curve. Like most things are going to fall into the B tier,
That's true.
and so to be in the S tier, it has to be truly an impactful and great legion or chapter, and then to be in the D tier, it would have to be just horrible. So I would say B is fair. They're middle of the line. They have their fans. They have their supporters. Slanesh is freaking metal as fuck.
I think they're a pretty
B
good
tier for sure.
representation of Slanesh. They did get the cool model of Fulgrim recently, so we'll put them in B. Next up, we have the Iron Warriors, the siege attackers of the Imperium, or previously, now for the Chaos Astartes, or Heretic Astartes, I should say. I'm not a big fan of Iron Warriors. I think Perturabo is like not a very cool Primarch. Maybe that's heresy to some people, but these are a Heretic Legion. I understand why the Imperial Fists hate these guys because they are kind of bums. I'd probably say for them, like honestly, both the Iron Warriors and the Iron Hands for me are probably my two least favorite chapters overall. I honestly prefer the Iron Warriors over the Iron Hands, but I'd go as far to say that they're probably like C tier for me. I just don't think Perturabo is very cool. I think that's just like my personal opinion on that.
I'm going to tend to agree here. For me, I think the Iron Warriors is most likely going to be my first C tier pick, and I'll explain why. Basically, when it comes to their Primarch, Perturabo, he's painted as this grand strategist, and when it comes to important battles during the Horus Heresy and important battles during Modern Era, He never wins. He's pretty much like a punching bag. Even during a really important event like I believe it was called the Iron Cage, where they faced off against the Imperial Fists. Like, yeah, he did a lot of major damage to the Imperial Fists, but it still didn't result in like this resounding victory. For a grand strategist, you would expect that it would, but he's not the guy who's collecting W's during the Horus Heresy or post Horus Heresy era. When it comes to the uniqueness of the Iron Warriors, that would make them pretty much prevent them from being in D tier because they are the guys who partner up with the Dark Mechanica, who are bringing the big guns to the battlefield. But what really knocks them into C tier for me is going to be their lore. There's a really hilarious scene or chapter in the first Gaunt's Ghost novel where two Iron Warrior Space Marines come out and they start gunning down guardsmen. And in the blink of an eye, they're able to kill 10 guardsmen or something, which is impressive. They're Space Marines, they should be able to do that. But these are trained guardsmen and they are hyped up on adrenaline and drugs. And they turn to the Space Marines and they just gun them down, last rifles, full power. And it's just kind of an example in lore, in the story. Like, Space Marines can definitely be killed by guardsmen, but it's just hilarious that it was the freaking Iron
there's
Warriors,
a similar thing that happens to the Word Bearers, I believe, where they just get suplexed. Two of their Terminators get suplexed by an Ogryn, which is pretty hilarious. But
that is hilarious.
I would say the Iron Warriors, they can go above D tier because they're not terrible. They just aren't very cool compared to some of the other chapters, in my opinion. But they do have that tech aspect, which does put them up a little bit higher for me. I'd say they still go into C. It's a pretty good spot for them.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the White Scars. White Scars are strange to me because I like their armor design. I like their models. They do have their little motorcycle bikes and all of that, and that's pretty neat. I just think that they don't get enough to do in the story. Usually, especially recently, they've been kind of left behind. White Scars for me are probably a C tier pick as well. They're pretty cool, just not that cool. And Khan is an alright Primarch to me, but nothing compared to some of the other ones, especially for the Loyalist Legions. I'm curious what your opinion on these guys are.
Yeah, so for me, just starting off with Jagged-Eyed Khan, I love the mystery behind basically where he's currently at in the story. How he's lost in the webway. Is Khan banging Dark Eldar over in Camarilla, or is he slaughtering thousands of them? We don't know. It's just kind of left open. I think that's the most alluring thing about his character in general. Similar to Lionel Johnson, he is also a very good duelist. He definitely proved that during the Horus Heresy. It's just that he doesn't really have much involvement beyond that. And the White Scars in general, just like you said, their unique thing is that it's speed, right? It's all about speed. They have some really, really cool tactics that they can pull off on the tabletop, and they have one of the cooler codexes out there in terms of if you're looking for a unique playstyle, they're a very, very good army to pick up. But in the lore right now, they're not really too involved in anything important. They're not involved in bringing the Emperor back like the Custodes are. There is no Terminus Decree that stirs up drama with the Grey Knights. There really isn't anything happening there.
I do feel
they're
White
definitely
Scars
more of
behind, for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely more of a C tier for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree on this as well. I would say I think they're cooler than Iron Warriors. I put them above them, but I don't think they're quite as cool as a B tier pick. So White Scars can go here. They just need more. And that comes up a lot in 40k in general, and especially with the next chapter we have, because we have the Space Wolves, the furry chapter, Furry Legion. These guys get made fun of all the time. They have the whole Wolfen thing. Lehman Russ is pretty cool, kind of dumb, but a pretty interesting executioner for the Emperor. My biggest issue with Space Wolves is how they have been presented in 40k constantly as the Wolf Legion. We have giant wolves we ride, we have wolf helmets, we have wolf everywhere on our armor. They're much cooler as Because like Fenris is supposed to be basically Scandinavia as like an entire planet, like hyped up on sci-fi drugs. And it's pretty interesting that they have like a bunch of mutants on the planet, but like this leaning into the wolf aspect of the space wolves is like the lamest part of them for me. I would like to see them do more interesting things with them. If they actually like, in Rogue Trader, these guys are presented pretty well. If like it was just that as like their entire representation across all of 40k, I'd easily put them in S tier. I do like them as a chapter for that aspect of them, but I can't really put them that much higher than like B or A, just because they have been kind of done dirty by Games Workshop for quite a while. I'm curious what you think about them.
So I would rank them as currently the top of B tier. I would put them above Emperor's Children, and one of the reasons why is because if I don't, then the furries will come after me.
True. That's true.
But on a more serious note, so again, just a Primarch, uniqueness, and then their role in the lore. So I've always thought that the Space Wolves are always at their best when they appear alongside other Space Marine. It's really cool to see like, oh, like for a Space Marine, this is really unique. Like this is literally a barbarian or a Viking. I really like that theme. When it comes to Leman Russ and his entire role in the Horus Heresy, the most important thing he did was, of course, go to Prospero to take care of Magnus. And he did his job. Yep, he did his job. He did it. And he messed him up. So Leman Russ is definitely terrifying as a combatant, and he's definitely unique. I would say he's probably one of my favorite Primarchs, actually. Even considering the entire, what some people might consider to be cringe for like his background and the planet's background and everything like that.
Yeah.
But moving on to the uniqueness of the Space Wolves, I really like how even after the Codex was embraced by all of the legions and they split into chapters, the Space Wolves just kind of did their own thing. And it's partially due to the nature of their gene seed, but basically they didn't really fully break up into a bunch of different chapters. They all still consider themselves to be Space Wolves at the end of the day.
That's true. They can't properly make successor chapters until like Primaris, I believe, because they have like that huge gene seed defect of like Wolfen popping out everywhere. It's kind of stupid, to be honest. I like Leman Russ. I'm glad you mentioned him a little bit more. That Leman Russ is probably the coolest part of the Space Wolves and some like the representations and some of like their games and such. But as far as like their whole mutant aspect goes, I think it's like the dumbest part about them. I don't mind like the whole heightened senses thing, because that's pretty standard for like, some Space Marines will spit acid. Some of them, like, you have salamanders and stuff like that. They look completely different because of the planet they're born on. That's all pretty cool. I like those differentiating features. But for Space Wolves, I feel like they've just moved too far in like some pretty dumb directions. So I probably put them in high B. They are cool. Like they have some really, really cool aspects that do move them up much farther than like some of the other chapters might be that have similar stupid things around them. But Space Wolves could definitely be done better, I feel. I'm put them here.
Oh, last thing to mention about their kind of like lore and story significance. Of course, they played their role during the Horus Heresy, and they played it just fine. Another thing is when it comes to big 40k video games, just like FTG said, the Space Wolves do have a partial role in Rogue Trader with Ulfar. And if you haven't played Rogue Trader and you haven't experienced the story, it is fantastic.
Oh,
if you want to be, if you're a Space Wolves hater, play Rogue Trader, and just whenever you find Ulfar, keep him in the party. He has some fantastic dialogue. It's just really picturesque and representative of what the Space Wolves are as a chapter, and that's what makes me such a fanboy for them. Not necessarily all the furry stuff.
Yeah, they're pretty cool when they're like done, but it's like a Scandinavian, barbarian, a Viking, non-Codex compliant chapter. You see like, I'm glad you mentioned Rogue Trader, because I want to mention a couple things here. That in Rogue Trader, you see like the interaction between Space Wolves, that like they have a very unique culture where like they'll headbutt each other at one point to like, say like, job well done, and like they have an argument. They will get violent with each other, and that's pretty unique among most of the Codex compliant chapters. Well, they're not Codex compliant, but what I'm saying is compared to a Codex compliant chapter, you can definitely tell that like they have their own way of doing things, and most of the Loyalist chapters are pretty Codex compliant. So it's kind of interesting to see that on them. And also, it is pretty funny little lore tidbit that Leman Russ wanted to fight the Lion from the Dark Angels when the Lion would probably fuck him up, but didn't want
Oh
to
yeah.
fight Sanguinius when like Sanguinius would have probably been a more even fight, but we'll get into him eventually. So for now, Space Wolves be pretty cool, could just be done better. Next up we have the Sons of Rogel Dorn, the Imperial Fists, the Great Defenders. They sat there, defended the Golden Throne during the Horus Heresy, fought alongside the Custodes. We'll never let anybody forget that they fought alongside the Custodes. And
Oh yeah.
I think that the Imperial Fists are pretty damn cool. They might be my first S tier chapter, to be honest, because I think Rogel Dorn, first of all, Rogel Dorn does not have like a genetic bone in his entire body to betray the Emperor. He is just that guy. He will sit there and never turn to chaos. His entire legion is like super stalwart and like their job and their mission duty, and they are pretty damn cool. I also like their drip. I think like the yellow armor looks really interesting on them, and especially with the different company markings they have. So I'm curious what you think about the Imperial Fist, Jeff, as well.
So I think for the Imperial Fist, it's like you said, Rogadorn is a phenomenal Primarch. When it comes to his prowess as a duelist, that doesn't necessarily matter, because when we talk about being a battlefield genius or strategist, he is the complete opposite of Perturabo in every single way, in that the story will almost always paint Rogadorn as actually achieving things with his brilliant mind, instead of just losing left and right. So he definitely gets, yeah, protagonist buff, exactly. So it definitely kind of puts him over Perturabo in that regard. I really like the entire unique factor of the Imperial Fists in being defenders, just kind of this unstoppable wall. And like you said, they did their job. They were there during the Siege of Terra, fighting side by side with the Custodes against Horus and his forces. So I would say this is an A for me, not necessarily an S. Yes, and it's mostly because there are some other chapters here, or legions, that we're going to talk about that I think provide a lot of substance, especially in the modern era of the story.
I feel like I would
where
put
the
them,
Imperial Fists have also kind of taken a little bit of backseat.
maybe I could be convinced of A, but like I feel like that my first thought would be S, but I guess high A is fair. We'll put them there.
Let's put them in S for now, and
Alright,
we'll explain a proper benchmark for S later. And I promise, guys, Ultramarines are not going to be my first S tier pick, because I firmly believe that just because Games Workshop spams us with Ultramarine build stories, they have the most novels, they have the most media presence, that doesn't matter. What matters is good stories. Quality over quantity. So yeah, I'm not an Ultramarines worshiper.
I'm also not an Ultramarines worshiper, so we'll get into them soon. But first up, we have the Night Lords. I actually like the Night Lords a lot. They are kind of like the bat armored guys. Yeah, I think they are probably
S tier.
I mean, it's hard to not like
100%.
Night Lords. It's such a horrifying chapter. They were banished by the Emperor for being too good at their job and what they were made for, and everyone else got scared of them. They're probably like the most justified heretic legion, I think, in my opinion, just because they got done dirty. Like, they did their job. They were made for a reason. They did it perfectly, and it was so terrifying to the other chapters. They were like, what the fuck are these guys doing? Yo, Dad, can we get rid of them? He's like, oh shit, I totally didn't make them to do that, and let's get rid of them. And like naturally they turned away from the Imperium after that, and we're like, fuck these guys, we're gonna go do our own thing and kill you guys, and now we're heretics, but we don't even like chaos. So I think like on every level of a heretic legion or chapter, they really do fit like the perfect mold for them, and they also have really cool color combinations, really cool models. I like the way they have like their battles. They're kind of pussy sometimes in the way they fight, but like that's what they do. I would say they're 100% S tier. What do you think?
Yeah, they are the dirtiest of the dirty. When it comes to their Primarch, Conrad Kurz, he has a very unique ability to basically see into the future, even if it is just a couple of moments. but it makes him a very deadly combatant. And I think that just as a character in general, he's written so well. He's one of my favorite Primarchs, has to rank in the top 5 for the entire Horus Heresy. But he did a lot of heavy lifting in the scenes or chapters that he was included in. And when it comes to his Legion as a whole, or just the chapter as a whole, the Night Lords are freaking awesome. They're basically just criminal scum, the scummiest of the scum when it comes to their tactics, how they are recruited, how they treat one another, how they treat other people. I love their whole shtick where some of them don't even care about chaos. They're just there to fuck shit up. They're there to fuck the Imperium up.
It's great.
Like, it's amazing. And
they operate more like an assassin Orm at times, don't they? Even back when they were like a proper legion.
Yeah. But and then when it comes to the tabletop, they are a very fun and very unique army to play with an awesome codex. So S tier for sure. Even their role in the lore, they've got some very good books that everybody should check out. The Night Lords trilogy is amazing reading material, and I love that Games Workshop took the opportunity to basically pin the Night Lords and the Carcharodons against one another. Just crazy stuff. Just the scummiest chaos chapter versus basically the scummiest.
I also love their color combo. I feel like they look really good on tabletop and just in game and stuff like that. S tier for sure. I put them even above the Imperial Fists. They're the guys. Next up we have Blood Angels, the Sons of Sanguinius. My personal favorite chapter. These guys 100% go into S tier for me. But I just think the Blood Angels are one of the most unique chapters. They have multiple gene seed defects now, and now one of them was originally because of Sanguinius with the Red Thirst. They were basically like this Reaver vampire legion that everybody was terrified of. Sanguinius himself was potentially a mutant. He was terrified of being like an imperfect creature, and like everybody hailed him as like the perfect son of the Emperor. He embodied the most like interesting parts of the Emperor, like his foresight and things like that, and his ability to like lead people. He's one of the most inspiring Primarchs, and he inspired his own Legion to become better. I love him for that. I love this chapter for that. I think they really fit 40k as a whole, and that even though like chaos corruption is everywhere, it doesn't necessarily define you, because like in all likelihood, Sanguinius's wings were probably a warp mutation, and that's kind of an interesting part of his story to me. And also the fact that like the Red Thirst could also be a warp mutation as a result of him being like sent through the warp, and his Legion still rose above that. He rose above that. He also had one of the most epic final battles in the Siege of Terra, where he fought 2 Titans, Angron, and a Greater Demon of Khorne, or like one of the greatest demons of Khorne, all on the same day, and then inspired all the guardsmen and his fellow legions of the fellow Space Marines he had around him to keep fighting with him at the Eternity Gate. I think they're an easy S tier. I'm curious what you think about the Blood Angels.
So with the Blood Angels, I also think they're an S tier, and this is where I think the Imperial Fists are A tier, and something like the Blood Angels are S tier. When it comes to their Primarch, like you said, you pretty much highlighted all of his major feats, but while Sanguinius was around, he stole the spotlight. And whether that be because the writers knew that he was going to die sooner than Dorn did, or whatever the reason was, he's just such a great character overall, just as a reader. And when it comes to the unique factor of the Blood Angels, again, I love the memes online of like Blood Angels freaking out over every Chaos Space Marine that they see and basically just yelling and screaming at him like, "Oh, you're freaking Horus! Like, I'm gonna kill you!"
Yeah, the Black
Rage. I love it so much.
They're a chapter that became, I feel like every bit of the Blood Angels got more interesting the further you got into their storyline. Sanguinius was like the best friend of Horus. Horus truly respected him. I think in one of the books they say that like he is the only one of all the Primarchs that embodies the Emperor's soul, and we need him when all the fighting's done. And then the Horus Heresy happens. It's like the most tragic thing for him. His Legion gains another Gene Seed defect, and now they have the Death Company. So like they're one of the legions that kind of like benefited in terms of like story and play style after their Primarch died. They were like the most interesting interactions with that. I think they really are just a proper S tier pick. They're a top S tier for me personally. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but probably put them right here.
Yeah, they're definitely up there with the Night Lords, probably above them. I would agree with that. Again, I just think that the Fists would be kicked down into A tier, especially considering everything that we've just explained with the Night Lords and with the Blood Angels.
This week,
With all that added
would you put them above
context.
Dark Angels? I think I would. Above Dark Angels.
Yeah, well, that's hard.
I
Because
didn't
Dark
even
Angels
consider
are
Dark Angels an S, so I think I'd have to put them above.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's just Dark Angels are really ramping up with where they are in the setting currently. Like
That is
they're just
true.
getting much more involved and much cooler as time goes on, whereas the Fists are kind of stagnated, which is fitting for the Fists.
But they are the defenders. This is their
Yeah.
whole thing. I mean, at best, I'd say they're equivalent. I agree with that. I'm just not like, I guess the Dark Angels aren't my favorite Legion. I don't hate them by any means, but like, I think they were A tier for like what they represent and what they do in the story. But I do like Imperial Fists more. So for me, I put them in A. But I think we're pretty close on our opinions on these either way. But next up, we have
All right.
the Iron Hands.
I think we're at our first D tier.
Yeah, these guys suck. Iron Hands, like their whole shtick is we like technology a lot. We keep replacing our body parts with robot parts. Ferrus Manus was like one of the lamest Primarchs in my opinion. Also, like one of the only Primarchs that like straight up died in the Horus Heresy. And you know, if we compare the Ferrus Manus death to Sanguinius's death, there was no competition. Sanguinius just went out like a badass, and this guy went out like a bitch. Ferrus Manus, not very cool. Iron Hands, they do have some funny lore tidbits. Like there's some types of armor that like have to be grafted to your flesh, and like, oh my god, sign me up for that immediately. But they feel very like much like they have a shtick, more so than the other legions do, and like they fall exclusively into that shtick. And when they try to differentiate themselves from that, they're pretty boring. And also, I think their armor colors are just incredibly cool. And like, unlike the Raven Guard, they're also like fully painted black. Iron Hands just don't look as cool, in my opinion. Sure. So where would you put these guys?
Man, I mean, I just like you, I would put them in the D tier. I think they are our first D tier Legion, and I apologize to all of the Iron Hands fans out there. But when it comes to the Primarch, Ferrus Manus, his writing in the Horus Heresy is so limited. If you watch a lore video on like Major Kill's channel, Wes Hammer's channel, any other Arbiter Ian, whoever else that you watch, they're going to see the same things about Ferrus Manus because he's just not a complex character. And he doesn't really steal the spotlight whenever he's featured on the page.
He's
and
like
so
the anti-Sanguinius.
He's like the anti-Sanguinius. And him getting killed off early really doesn't have much bearing on the Horus Heresy as a whole, other than like, you know, cementing to the reader like, oh hey, yeah, we're gonna be killing our characters here. Like we're not afraid to kill our characters.
Yeah, someone had to get punched, and he got punked first. And unfortunately,
pretty much
that's pretty much where his entire Legion stayed.
When it comes to the Legion or chapter as a whole and their unique factor, again, if you like the Adeptus Mechanicus or the Necrons, but you want to play as a Space Marine chapter or Legion, the Iron Hands are your guys because they are all about robotics, cybernetic, android type stuff, self-mutilation in order to basically graft robotic parts onto themselves. They're very cool in that regard. Yeah,
a funny thing about the Iron Warriors is Iron Hands, they all like to replace their their body parts with robotics. Now sometimes Iron Warriors who follow Chaos, they will like cut off their own body parts, like their mutated body parts, to get replace them with cybernetics, and it's very annoying for them. So Iron Hands, they don't have that issue, but Iron Warriors are still cooler because they have more beef with like more interesting legions. And Iron Hands, it's gonna be. I mean, it's just it's unfortunate, but like I hope they get more interesting stuff. They have a shtick, but so does every single other legion, and there's just more interesting. Now, next up we have...
And guys, that's not to say... I just want to cut in. That's not to say they don't have interesting characters or lore as well, because they do. There's one story out there where an Iron Hands Space Marine was so impressed with a guardsman company, I believe it was, that they basically turned them on to servitors so that they can fight with them forever or for the rest of their lives. That was the guardsman's reward for their exceptional service. So they have some great lore out there.
Yeah, Salamanders, these guys were not. That's for sure.
No, they're not cool with one another.
Next up, we have the World Eaters, the sons
Let's
of
go.
Angron, angry boys, the Khornites. What can we really say about World Eaters? These guys were always kind of terrifying, even when they were a Loyalist Legion. Angron had the Butcher's Nails, which the Emperor really didn't help him with a whole lot. And now as a greater demon
No.
of Khorne, he is just a giant, constantly in pain, raging monster, raging bloodthirster. And they're pretty cool. I mean, they fit their spot for sure. They're just the Khornite guys. Kill for Khorne, blood for the Blood God. And I probably put them in B. I mean, like there's a ton of depth to Angron, especially post Horus Heresy. But like, I mean, what do you expect of a Khornite faction? The Butcher's Nails are pretty unique, but the fact that even like this techno magic still works on a demon is kind of funny. And Khorne just probably like leaves it in there to just keep them angry. And like most of their lives got worse once their Primarchs turned to Chaos. What do you think about the World Eater stuff?
Man, when it comes to the World Eaters, I also say B as well, B for blood. But when it comes to Angron in general, first of all, why you gotta name your kid Angron, man? Like you're setting him up for his entire destiny.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
He already sounds like a bloodthirster before he's even a raider at that point.
Exactly, dude. They designed the model and the story before they picked the name. But when it comes to Angron, he actually has one of the better backstories of all the Primarchs. It is so tragic. Just his entire upbringing and how he would become a leader and basically, for the most part, save himself, save his world. But yeah, I'm kind of speechless because Angron should be one of the better and stronger Primarchs on the list as a duelist, as a fighter, as a shock trooper type unit, but he gets clapped by everyone, left and right.
Even
no matter
during,
where
like,
he is in the
Siege of
setting.
Terra, he still gets slapped up by Sanguinius. It's like, are we serious?
He gets messed up by Sanguinius, which that is an amazing chapter, by the way. Just Sanguinius basically taking the nails out of his brother's head, so that for the 5 seconds before he gets banished to the warp, he realizes the error of his ways and the horrible choice that he's just made by becoming, or by giving himself to Khorne, basically.
Yeah.
It just
It's pretty
amazing.
tragic. I would say he goes into B for kind of a bum, but tragedy is tragedy. He can still go into we'll still put him here. You know, B for blood, B for bum Primarch that got. He
I
made
was
like
gonna
the
say,
worst
so
decision.
their uniqueness as a chapter is amazing. So I don't know if you know this, but and this kind of feeds into the lore as well. Most of the current World Eaters are actually just clones. They're clones that inherit the memories of the Marines that were alive during the Horus Heresy. And so for them, the Horus Heresy was yesterday. Literally, they're 1 day old, just got cloned from another World Eater, and they're just a shambling mass in power armor that's being sent out to freaking collect skulls for Khorne. I think that makes them amazing.
That is a pretty neat little
unfortunately,
tidbit about them. I'll say I like their armor a ton. Like Khornite armor in general is just
yes.
a cool color combination, and they have like a lot of cool designs for the helmets, especially. And they like to fight in melee combat a lot too. Pretty neat.
I think that they rank at the top of B tier because on the tabletop, their army is also very fun. If you want to do like a primarily melee army, like these are the Chaos Space Marines that you pick if you want to do that. Really, really cool mechanics.
I could see them at the top of B. I'll put them there.
Yeah.
To be fair. World Eaters, man. I also like their symbol, to be honest. I wish they stayed loyal, but I don't even know what that looked like at this point because they're kind of fucking crazy even before they fell to chaos. But the next,
that's pretty much what the Minotaurs are. The Minotaurs are basically what the World Eaters would be if they had stayed loyal.
The Minotaurs were cool. I wish they were on this list. Unfortunately, not a founding chapter. But next chapter we have are the Ultramarines. The sons of Rabute Gilliman, the Blueberries, the most overrepresented chapter legion in all of 40k for Space Marines. They are the poster boys. They are the guys in blue. They have the most stories around them of any chapter and most games around them, especially with like Space Marine 2. I would say these guys are cool. Like, let's be clear, they may be overrepresented, but Ultramarines they wrote the book on being in Astartes. Rabute Gilliman made the Codex Astartes. For sure, it was supposed to be guidelines, more so than like a full-on rule book, and then he kind of got stuck in stasis. But the Ultramarines, they have one of the most successful gene seeds of any legion, because they don't really have a lot of corruption, which is why they have so many successor chapters, and overall, they kind of are just like the premier basic ass Astartes. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, when you think of an Astartes chapter, they just do everything pretty well. They aren't like super exceptional in every area, but they're a jack of all trades, a master of none. But that really does work for them quite a bit, because they are in the forefront of a lot of conflicts, and they are across the galaxy all the time. And like hell, at this point, Rabute Gilliman is basically in control of the Imperium. I mean, he has to deal with politics between like the Custodes and the High Lords of Terra, but like, well, who are you gonna say? What are you gonna say to a Primarch? No, it's one of those things where like he's kind of like a de facto leader, even if he still has to deal with the politicking. But he is one of the best statesmen. So I would say these guys can probably go into like A. I don't know if I'd say they're quite S, because I don't think they're as interesting as these two are, but they are very influential in 40k period. What do you think about the Ultramarines?
I am gonna argue for B tier for the Ultramarines. And the reason for that is because, again, like, they just have the advantage of having a massive volume of material available for their legion and their chapter, which is kind of funny, because back during the Horus Heresy, the Ultramarines didn't really do well. They were very successful. They have a great track record, but for the final battle, right, being locked in the warp as they were, they really couldn't contribute as much to the Siege of Terra as someone like the Imperial Fists, for example, or even the Blood Angels. But nowadays, they run the setting. Like, Ultramarines are the poster boy Space Marine chapter. They have pretty much the most successful, like, little sub-empire within the Imperium. With Ultramar and everything.
Ultramar is pretty cool. Even there was even at one point where, like, in the Horus Heresy, they kind of retreated to Ultramar for a little bit, like Sanguinius, and that they teamed up with Rabute Gilliman. And were like, hey, dude, things were getting like a little fucked up. And I do think Rabute Gilliman's pretty cool. Like, he may be like a little basic,
he's
but
amazing.
He's pretty cool. But what else do you think about the Ultramarines as far as their placement in the Horus Heresy?
Whenever I think of the Ultramarines, I think about what the other Space Marine legions or chapters, what they could be if nothing went wrong. Because nothing went wrong for the Ultramarines. Things are going wrong now because they have such an extensive presence in the setting, in the 41st, 42nd millennium here. But up until now, things haven't really gone wrong for them. They haven't really had to struggle and earn it. And so for me, that's what puts them into just like a firm B tier.
I could definitely see the argument for B. I would still put them in A just for like their impact on the setting, because like you said, they are like, I don't know, Ultramarines just feel like a faction that's going to stay around until or like a chapter will stay around until the heat death of the universe. Like, they're probably gonna be the last ones to die. If all the Imperium's falling, like Rabute Gilliman and the Ultramarines with like Titus and things like that are going to be at the final lines before like chaos breaks through into the Holy Terra. So I would put them in like a low A, but
three named non-helmet wearing Ultramarines are going to be, beating Horus when he returns.
Yeah, beating the reincarnation of Horus that like somehow made it back to the warp after his soul got snuffed. I'd say
Space Marine 6.
Yeah, Space Marine 6, Warhammer End Times. Warhammer 40k End Times. I would say I don't really agree with like B. I'm gonna put them in low A. I think
let's put them into low A for now. See how we feel when we populate the list.
That's true. We will take a look at the list once we're all done here. But next we have the Death Guard, the Sons of Mortarion. I think Mortarion is pretty cool. I think he does have some weird writing around him where he kind of goes back and forth on like whether or not he truly gives a shit about his Space Marines, but for the most part, I think like his most consistent writing is that he does. He's a pretty cool guy. Maybe he looks a little edgy when he was like a loyalist Primarch. But I do think Nurgle legions are pretty cool. My only issue with Nurgle is that Nurgle's kind of overrepresented in like a lot of the games and stuff like that, but it's not like a really a slight on their legion. Death Guard look really cool. They are very hard to kill. They're pretty interesting models. They have a fully set roster on the tabletop, and I actually just kind of prefer them. If I was to play a Heretic Space Marine Legion, it would be them. I'd say I'd probably put them into A tier. I like their story. I like the way that Mortarion basically sacrificed his whole legion to just save them from like eternal suffering in the warp. It is kind of tragic. They have a pretty cool storyline around that. I'm curious what you think about the Death Guard.
I rank him at the top of A, and the reason for that is because of when we talk about the Primarch Mortarion, the dichotomy between his character and a character like Typhus makes the Legion or the chapter in general very interesting, even in the modern setting, both the Horus Heresy and the modern setting. If you haven't read the book Lords of Silence, definitely recommend that. Very, very great Death Guard novel. And it kind of goes into the politics of what is kind of going on between Mortarion and Typhus nowadays. How a lot of the New Age Plague Marines, the New Age Death Guard, they're more prone to follow Typhus because he actually wants to get things done. And a lot of the older guys, the veterans of the chapter who were there during the era where Mortarion made the sacrifice that he made, they respect the hell out of Mortarion. So it is a very cool dynamic. And when it comes to their uniqueness, these guys are the Plague Marines, just straight up. And I think that, dude, like who would want to fight that, dude? Like nobody wants to actually fight the Death Guard or the Plague Marines. Like, you look at Darktide, for example, and what Nurgle's powers could do. Like, realistically, no faction wants to go up against that. Like, it's horrifying.
No, you're basically
Like, when we
dealing
talk
with like
about-
super powered soldiers on top of like a virus. And listen,
Yeah.
this is just for me. Sickness is like the worst thing ever. Whenever it's like some sci-fi setting where it's like, okay, you guys are getting shot at, and also there's a viral like weapon, like a weapon engineered virus to like to just like fuck you up. That's not cool. I'm like,
it's
that's
gonna create a zombie apocalypse on your planet, by the way.
pretty much.
Like,
and it's horrifying to deal with. And honestly, it's such a dangerous thing in the setting itself that half the time when it is represented in like a game or something, they can't properly represent it. Or the guardsmen that walked 5 feet into the wrong room and just die. It'd be like inhaling a spore, like The Last of Us or something. You're fucked. There's nothing you can do. So Death Guard, in terms of like how threatening they are, I think they're one of the most threatening legions because viral plagues are very hard to deal with for like any faction of the Imperium. And like, unless you have power armor to like properly ventilate yourself or like a psyker around you, you can definitely get fucked up by these guys. Nurgle's pretty terrifying. I would say they go into high A as well. I think Death Guard are pretty cool. So we're gonna put them here. Pretty cool chapter. I think most people like Death Guard though. Next up we have the Thousand Sons. The guys who they were gonna turn to Chaos Spawn, they got turned to dust. They have one of the most powerful sorcerers of chaos ever with Ahriman. Magnus is the most powerful psyker of all the Primarchs. He was one of the only guys that might have been able to sit in the Golden Throne after the Emperor and Malkador. I think that Magnus is pretty cool. He may look kind of stupid now with like his giant like horn nipples on his models now, but he is pretty cool guy. I would say Magnus, his storyline is one of the more interesting ones in the Horus Heresy. He did done fuck up though when there was like the giant golden palace got busted through and to get that message to the Emperor and had the custodians get their coolest feat ever by holding the throne room. He may have cost like the lives of some 4,000 custodians, whatever it may be. Yeah, Magnus fucked up many times. Maybe don't go into the warp and talk to Tzeentch on accident. That's just what I'm saying. But as far as like storylines go, they have really cool ones. He's very active in the Horus Heresy. He got suplexed by knee crack, got baned by Leman Russ, and then gave himself to Tzeentch entirely. And Tzeentch is one of the more interesting Chaos Gods to me. So I'd say these guys are probably A around the Death Guard. I think they're quite cool, maybe even S. What do you think about the Thousand Sons?
So I disagree so much. I think that Space Marine 2 has warped my perception of the Thousand Sons overall. And I think that they're just a straight B, maybe even C tier faction for me. And the reason for that is let's talk about Magnus and his role in the lore. So Magnus tried to get involved in the more modern setting, and there's this whole sequence where he basically tries to ambush Roberto Gorilla Man, and he just gets destroyed just by two
That's the
Sisters
beauty
of Silence
Magnus.
or something. Like, he gets clapped.
Oh, Mortarion got clapped by Caldor Drago in those Grey Knights. Let's not forget.
That's true, yes, and that is absolutely true. But to be the most powerful psyker, the most powerful psyker demon prince, like, you would assume that his feats of strength list would be significantly longer, but it really isn't. And Caldor Drago's got a
Caldor
sharper
Drago is
mind,
kinda nuts.
crazier powers than Magnus does, and he didn't have to make a deal with Tzeentch to get him, which is nuts.
I feel like Magnus. I don't know. I like Magnus as Primarch. He's kind of like he is kind of a bitch these days. But his storyline, the Horus Heresy, the whole fact that his entire legion was going to turn to Chaos Spawn, basically, like that's just what was going to happen to them if he didn't make a deal with Tzeentch for the flesh change. And then Ahriman is a pretty cool Chaos Sorcerer. Like he is one of the strongest.
Ahriman is what salvages their lore for me. Ahriman is a very, very cool character, and I like how he's always diving into forbidden knowledge and things that he's not supposed to get into. I'm a huge fan of the characters like Ahriman, Fabius Bile, Trazen the Infinite. These characters who are these like fringe geniuses who kind of push the narrative forward with their discoveries. That's what salvages the Thousand Sons for me. But the fact that he's better than the Primarch in the setting is
I feel that part
concerning.
of that's that we have moved away from focusing the Primarchs in a lot of cases, more so focusing on like their chapter masters and stuff like that. I feel like the Ahriman's cool. He's kind of like Mephiston in the sense that even though Mephiston's not powered directly by the warp, he is a very powerful greatest sorcerer. Tzeentch. He is the last person I'd want to fuck with as a psyker if I wasn't like a Primarch or something.
Oh
and he may have fucked up incredibly hard by turning the entire legion to dust and like costing them like 80% of their total gene seed. But I'd still say he does bump them up to like at least high B for me. Thousand Sons will go here.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Now next we have the Luna Wolves, the Sons of Horus. Where do we put these guys? These were one of the first. I think they were the first legion to get their Primarch back. Horus met the Emperor, and the Emperor was like, "You guys are incredible. Oh my God, you're my War Master now." I mean, they believed their own hype because they were hype. Yeah, they fucked up dramatically by starting the entire Horus Heresy, but they are pretty cool. I like these guys quite a bit. I would say they're at least A tier, if not S tier. I mean, they are the Sons of Horus. Kind of have to put them in S tier, in my opinion, just because they are.
I think that they're S tier. They're the major driving factor for the current narrative in 40k, and they're doing a damn good job of it. So let's just talk about their history for a second, right? So Primarch 1, Horus, like when we go toe to toe with other Primarchs, before he got powered up by the Chaos Gods, he's not the best duelist, he's not the strongest, nothing like that. But he is a very engaging character, and one of the better ones as a reader to actually dig through and get into. He, just like Sanguinius, he steals the spotlight. And the authors do this on purpose because they want you to like Horus. They want you to sympathize with him and his plight throughout the Horus Heresy. And that's why, obviously, people are fans of Chaos because it's chaos. They like the entire theme of demons and darkness and heavy metal, sorcery, all that stuff. But at the same time, there is a point to be made that the Imperium is too big and too corrupted for its own good. And he portrays that perspective perfectly. The uniqueness of the Sons of Horus, the Luna Wolves, it's not really the most unique Space Marine Legion. They kind of do everything bare bones, but when they evolve into the Black Legion, that's where things get interesting, because they are kind of the masters of everything.
Yeah,
They
let's
they
follow
have
Abaddon the spoiler.
berserkers. Yeah, with Abaddon, they have berserkers, they have Death Guard, they have sorcerers, they have every single chaos demon. Like they are the masters of everything.
Chaos Undivided is
They
always
have
pretty cool.
they really are, and they've got war bands similar to the Night Lords, where they don't give a fuck about chaos. They're just using chaos because they hate the Imperium so damn much. And those are always my favorite Chaos Space Marines, where they're just using chaos as a tool against the Imperium and just as a means of achieving greater power, greater ends. So I think that they're definitely S tier, and of
I
course,
would agree with that,
lore
sure.
wise, everything going on right now with Abaddon, with Vashtor, all that stuff just makes for a great narrative.
I mean, they did basically set up the entire 40k universe. You know, humanity basically takes two gigantic L's in 40k lore, the Horus Heresy being one of them. You know, it was like, the war with the Men of Iron. And the Emperor comes back, he makes all these Primarchs, and then it all goes to shit because of Horus. And now humanity is not necessarily, we haven't lost, we are losing. Like, it's a slow L that we're taking.
It's
But,
all it's all going to shit again because of the Great Rift.
it's all
Love
going
it.
to shit again. And the Black Legion and their Blackstone fortresses and all the fuckery they've been doing, I'd say easy S. I may put them above the Night Lords, to be honest, because they are they're just the guys. And it makes sense that, Sanguinius is best friends with Horus, and they're both in S tier. So we'll put them up here. And moving on from them, we will say the Word Bearers, the Sons of Lorgar. Lorgar is generally accepted as the weakest Primarch. He was technically a Psyker. Or like one of the strongest psychers outside like Magnus, which isn't really saying much because his feats aren't like epic for psychic power. But Lorgar wanted to worship the Emperor as a god. The Emperor said no. He got really upset at that and like slowly turned to chaos. He was one of the first guys that turned to chaos, and he is directly responsible for Horus's fall to chaos by planting those bad thoughts in his head. So I would say Word Bearers, they may be kind of pussies as a legion to me. I know they're in Rogue Trader, which is pretty neat to see, but I just don't think they're a very intimidating faction or chapter to me. I'd probably put them in like A. What do you think about the Word Bearers?
C tier, dude. I would put the Word Bearers in C tier, and there's a lot of lore significance behind my decision. But first, let's talk about the Primarch, of course. So, Lorgar. I just think that when I'm reading the sections of the Horus Heresy featuring Lorgar, it's hard for me as a reader to suspend my disbelief and get into his mindset, because his upbringing paints him as this religious zealot, but he's not an idiot. He's not stupid, and he's got that Primarch juice in him. So he should be
He's a very
bit
wrinkled
more
brain.
intelligent. He should be a bit more intelligent than your average Joe, even considering his upbringing. And the fact that he decides to basically just betray everything and worship the Chaos God, to me has never made much sense. I've never been able to empathize with the character as a reader. I don't know. Maybe that's on me. I read the entire Horus Heresy and I liked the majority of the other Primarchs, just not this one. So maybe that's a failure on the writer's part. But I don't think that Lorgar is well written. His motivations don't make sense to me, and they don't make sense to the greater scope of the Horus Heresy. I understand what they were trying to portray. He's just a religious zealot, and he found real gods, so he worships them. Like, very simple, right?
That's true. This guy really wanted his religion, and the God Emperor was not giving it to him, so he did fall to chaos.
Yeah.
I don't know why he wanted that
like,
so bad, but
I don't like pitting simple characters like that against a character like Sanguinius, which is just an exceptional, complex, well-written character. It just makes him a significantly weaker Primarch to me. And of course, the fact that he's not really a great fighter, not really a great psyker, doesn't really have anything magnificent.
He's technically
going
a
for
very
him in that
strong
part.
psyker compared to everyone but Magnus.
Is he?
But that's not. I mean, technically, he is. He's just like. I mean, that's somebody saying much on the count of the Primarchs of this, because like the Magnus is the one that like primarily gets like psyker feats for the most part.
Sure.
Yeah. I would say Lorgar. He could go into B for Bitchmaid. He is like my least favorite Primarch as far as actual Primarchs go. But
there's
Manus.
more, dude. There's more. So we talk about the uniqueness of his armies, and this is where things get interesting, because as an undivided faction, they have access to basically every single demon unit, and I love the fact that their whole shtick is mutations, chaos spawn. Very, very cool. When we get into the lore, I encourage everybody to read through series such as the Ravenor series. The Word Bearers nowadays in the current setting, they are doing their best to spread chaos, corruption, and worship basically through covetous means or through more clandestine methods. They're not really going out like the World Eaters and just trying to conquer planets or kill as many people as they could. Like, they are trying to spread like the religion of chaos, right? They want to make it known to the Imperium that the chaos gods exist and you should worship them. Sounds cool, except they get dominated. They get absolutely outmaneuvered by the Inquisition, or in the case of Rogue Trader, by just a rogue trader. Who, well, I guess the Inquisition's also involved in Rogue Trader.
Yeah, the
so
Inquisition
they get
they
get outmaneuvered by the Inquisition left and right. Like they just cannot catch W in the modern setting whatsoever. So
can't even catch it against an ogre
can't-
in the like suplexes or terminators.
Exactly.
It's pretty rough.
They,
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'll put them
Dude.
above. Yeah,
they're literally written to be losers.
all right.
it's-
You know what?
it's really
with the words
sad.
you're preaching, these guys are going to D. They're going to
There
D.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, Lorgar. I mean, they like corrupting Horus is a pretty big feat, but D tier you go. They're just like they're not very
Well,
interesting.
one
I don't
character
know.
corrupted
I don't
Horus,
really. I've really never met any word bearer
So
fans
I
to
would-
be honest. But
I would put them into C tier because when it comes to chaos legions and chapters, it's gonna get worse. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
That
man.
is true. There's only one left, but okay, they can go to high D.
Yep. There you go.
We'll say next we have Salamanders, the sons of Vulcan, the only Primarch that inherited the perpetual status of the Emperor. It's quite an interesting little thing to admit of him. They are born on a pretty like a sunlight affected world. I feel like why they have like the pitch charcoal black skin. Vulcan is the physically largest Primarch of any of the Primarchs, and he's also a pretty chill guy, except for that time that he killed that Eldar baby. And for the most part, these guys are pretty chill on civilians and pretty friendly to be around. Probably one of the nicest chapters you could deal with. They are all that nice. There's like a bit of a misconception on the Salamanders. Like, they do care about civilians, but like some of them absolutely do not. But either way, they're one of the most popular chapters. We love their melta-guns, we love like their plasma rifles and stuff like that. And they are pretty interesting, and they have some pretty cool color combinations and models. What do you think of these Salamanders?
So for me, the Salamanders kind of actually go hand in hand with the Ultramarines. I put them right next to them in A tier because although they don't have as much material out there as the Ultramarines do, whenever the Salamanders appear, they're a genuine delight to read in any novel or see in any form of media. I actually hope that, if we are going to get a Space Marine 3, or when we get Space Marine 3, that not only is it super Ultramarine pilled, but I hope they introduce a Salamander. The best example of Salamanders and Ultramarines working really well on the screen together is actually with Salamander Sakan and the Apothecary, the Ultramarine Apothecary that he works with in the Warhammer Plus animation, some of the newer ones that have dropped. Just magnificent cinema. You could catch different clips of their teamwork against Necrons on YouTube. Their interactions are just super freaking cool. And if Henry Cavill and Amazon ever create a series on Amazon, if they eventually get there, the Salamanders are gonna farm easy W's on the screen as characters that the audience can just relate with left and right, because they are just the good guys, the good guy space.
I feel like I want to put these guys in S, to be honest, because I feel like they are very.
They may be. I'm not even done, because Vulcan in the Horus Heresy, just as a Primarch, again, like, he's not the best duelist. He is a perpetual cool. The coolest thing about him is that moment where he kills those Eldar, those innocents, and he has character development. Not a lot of these characters have inspiring character development but Vulcan does. Like, Vulcan's story is the story of the hero's journey. It really is.
That's a good
And
point.
from beginning to end, it's amazing. It is a great read. And his interactions with all the other Primarchs, how he earns their respect, is awesome. We talk about the uniqueness of the Salamander Legion or the Salamander chapter, how they're all from Nocturne, basically this lava planet like Mustafar. How
Yeah.
they all become Space Marines, their journey from novice to battle brother, basically hunting dragons to become Space Marines, like to prove themselves.
They are pretty
is
fucking
cool.
metal on their planet.
It is cool.
I put
The
these
the
guys in
fact
S,
that
I think.
yeah, the fact that they adopt the Codex Astartes, but you could drag them to S because I agree.
I didn't put them above Night Lords, to be honest. I think they're just
Yeah.
like there's a reason Salamanders are so popular. That's because they just
Oh
have like
yeah,
they have like really cool armor, really cool backstory, really cool Primarch, and they're pretty
And their
active in like
tactics.
all portions of 40k. Yeah, their tactics were pretty cool.
I love their tactics. I love how unique their battlefield strategies are. Like they are the guys who want to melt everything. Like that is awesome. And I think a lot of other people think that it's awesome as well.
Salamanders definitely
Easy
do
yes.
fit that dragon
Easy
that
yes.
dragon aesthetic. Let's say next we have the Raven Guard, the Sons of Korax. These guys
Yes.
are the stealthy guys. Lightning claws, hiding in the shadows, going cloaked, and killing you with ferocious feathers on their armor. It's quite interesting that these guys have like a very unique armor style. They like to use the beaky helmets all the time. They have a really cool model recently that got revealed. And I like the Raven Guard a lot, though I wouldn't say I'd put them above B just because like they aren't quite on the level of these other chapters, but they are kind of forgotten about. Though they have really cool armor and really cool models, and hopefully they get more going forward because maybe Games Workshop will put some more effort into like more interesting models for them. But they did get that chapter master recently, so that's pretty cool. What do you think about the Raven Guards, Jeff?
So I currently I think that the Raven Guards are at the end of B tier, maybe the top of C tier, because I think that they need a reinvention in the lore. They are a magnificent army to play on the tabletop. Similar to the White Scars, you know, they are all about blitzkrieg, getting into melee, also similar to the World Eaters in that fact. But I think that let's just break it down. So Primarch, Corvus, just awesome. Awesome
Corvus is
abilities, just super cool. His choice of weaponry, his war gear. Like I love the aesthetic. I think that the Raven Guard, of the original 18, they're my favorite actually. Like if this was my list, like they would be an S tier. But because we're ranking them against every other founding legion here and Space Marine chapter, for me, I just don't think that they break C tier. I'm a very narrative driven guy. I love the lore, and the Raven Guard just ain't present. Like they're not as significant as the other chapters on this list. They don't really steal the page.
That is, I agree that they do not steal the page.
Yeah.
They are very neglected. They're even more neglected than like Space Wolves are at this point, which is kind of crazy to say.
Mhm.
And I would say, I mean, high C, I could definitely agree with that. I was gonna put them in B,
Yeah.
but they really they don't have enough yet. That's like my issue.
And
They
again,
don't have enough
guys,
representation.
On this list, this is my favorite chapter. Like I'm trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can with the rating system that FTG and I have created here based off of Primarch's chapter uniqueness and the lore. And I think that they rank in high
Yes,
C
I am
tier.
also trying to be unbiased. That's why I put my favorite chapter at the top of S. But it's not my fault Sanguinius is just that guy, right? It's not my fault Blood Angels are just that cool. But Raven Guard and C, that makes sense to me. I like them a lot.
Mhm.
They just don't do enough to like compare the other legions in terms of like story presence and lore. Now, next up we have the Alpha Legion. I am Alfarius, the Legion. They are kind of strange. I do not like their armor, Jeff. I'll be honest. I do not like their teal.
Oh, you don't
green.
like their aesthetic?
No, I do not like their aesthetic at all. And also like this three-headed dragon shit, dude. Like I know it's supposed to be like sneaky and like a little suspicious. Like where's their true loyalty lie? I don't give a shit. Like I'll be honest. I don't think Alfarius is very cool. And I'd probably put them in like C or D tier. I'm just not a big fan of them as a Heretic Legion. What do you think?
So before some of the more recent Alpha Legion books and updates, I would have put them into high B, maybe even A tier. But with the stories that we have now and the lore that we have now, I would put them into the lowest of the low, the bottom of D tier. And the reason for that, again, let's just break this down. So Primarchs. Whoops, sorry about that. So Primarchs.
What you fuck, you hit like a guitar, dude?
Yeah, I hit my my microphone arm.
Oh, that's funny.
The Afarius Omegon. They're unique. You got two, right? You got two instead of one. It's really unique that they're twins. And the entire background and mystery of these characters and of the Legion or chapter as a whole is really it's really charming, it's rapturous, it's very cool and mysterious. But as we get further and further on in the lore and we get into the current setting, you actually find that they're extremely disorganized. They're a shadow of their former self. They're making, when it comes to just the overall struggle of chaos versus the Imperium or chaos versus everyone, they're not really making too much of a difference. And what's actually carrying them in the current setting is that they've kind of become a little bit of a meme. In one of their more recent books, they kind of go head to head or toe to toe with the Inquisition, and the Inquisition takes steps where they're almost overcautious because they believe that what the Alpha Legion is doing is basically part of a greater plan, when in reality all the Alpha Legion is doing is just trying to harass Imperium forces, raid for supplies. They're not enacting any form of great plan. They're actually quite unorganized, and they're just trying to survive.
That's the great deceit, is that everybody thinks they have a great plan. But maybe there will be more to it. Maybe their storyline. I mean, obviously the storylines are 40K. Maybe a snail's pace. Usually books don't release that often. But I think they're pretty. Oh, I don't know if I put them at the bottom of D tier. I think I might put them at like upper. I put them above Word Bearers. I think Word Bearers are pretty lame.
Okay.
I would put them
definitely above Iron Hands.
All right, we can put them below Word Bearers if they're that bad. No.
There you go, side by side there.
Side by side, where they belong. That is pretty much every single Space Marine founding chapter here listed. Now, I don't think there's anything I'd move here, to be honest. I think they're all pretty well placed, at least from my preferences.
This is perfect, yeah.
Let us know what you guys think in the comments below, where you would put all the founding chapters in the tier list like this. And what do you think about our placements? And thank you once again, Jefficus, for joining me on this. And check out his channel in the description below. And anything you want to say, Jeff? Go.
No, I mean, it was just great to be here. I just love talking about 40K, and I love Space Marines in general. So it's just an absolute delight to...
I do feel like I'm Imperium pilled. I agree.
Dude, me too. Yeah,
it's
super Imperium build.
It's like, man, am I Imperium fanboy? I mean, probably. But it's not my fault they get all the good stories for the most part. But that is pretty much all we have to say on this one. Thank you guys for watching. As always, if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And if you like Jefficus's ideas, check out his channel and subscribe to him. And as always, take it easy. Bye.